Welcome to Hospice Explained. This podcast is intended as an educational aid and is only a resource to begin to understand the end-of-life season. It is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Please always seek advice from your physician or qualified members of your healthcare team with any questions regarding a medical condition.
Hello and welcome to Hospice Explained. This is episode number 165. I'm your host, Marie Betcher. I'm a registered nurse. I'm a former hospice nurse. I started this podcast to help educate patients and families on hospice and the end-of-life season. On this episode, I am interviewing Daniel DeLoma. Daniel is a medical theologist, hospice chaplain, and founder of Meditative Heartbeat Therapy, an integrative contemplative modality at the intersection of physiology, spirituality, and ritual presence in palliative care. His book, Meditative Heartbeat Therapy, a contemplative guide to presence, rhythm, and care at end of life, presents a framework in which the heartbeat functions as both clinical anchor and spiritual flame, guiding the dying toward coherence, peace, and transcendence. With over a decade of hospice experience and a background in global palliative care, Daniel has companioned individuals across the full spectrum of dying, from those living unsheltered to those in private residences and inpatient units. His work focuses on the final 72 hours of life as a bardo, a liminal passage between forms of being which calls for silence, reverence, and attunement to the rhythms of the heart. Daniel is a certified Reiki master, teacher, and trained end-of-life doula educator. Daniel integrates ritual, narrative, and interfaith theology with clinical best practice. He currently serves with the palliative and hospice teams at Waveney Visiting Nurse and Hospice in Fairfield County, Connecticut. He lives and works in Fairfield County, where he remains devoted to the sacred task of helping others die well, with dignity, ritual, and the rhythm of the heart. Welcome, Daniel DeLoma. Daniel is a chaplain to Hospice Explained. Daniel has a book, and I just want you to tell us all about it because it's something so different to me than what I've heard about. So I'm excited.
Well, thank you, and I hope that a lot of people find it different and new. That was certainly one of the goals. It's called Meditative Heartbeat Therapy, a contemplative guide to presence, rhythm, and care at end of life. And the idea for the book was born from Meditative Heartbeat Therapy, which started about 5 years ago or so. And it started for me at the bedside of a patient. So I was with a patient who just couldn't get calm. He was experiencing restlessness, hallucinations, agitation, which, as you know, Marie, probably happens very often in hospice. And so I was trying to work with him and come up with something. And finally, I kept seeing him hold on to his chest. And so I said, hold on to that. Keep your hand there. And I want you to really feel your heartbeat. And we worked. I felt his pulse on his wrist while he felt his heartbeat. And we worked together to bring a calm in that moment. It was a very improvised kind of meditation moment. And when I realized what that could do for him, I began bringing that to other patients. And so over the 3 or so years, it grew. And then about 2 years ago, I turned it into a formal study and decided to see what can this do. And I use a recording stethoscope sometimes, or sometimes I use a standard stethoscope. And we'll work with the patient to listen to their heartbeat, synchronize it to their breathing, help to reduce pain and anxiety in conjunction with the comfort meds that we would use all the time.
That's absolutely fascinating. And I would imagine that you could at some points lessen the amount of medications.
Yes, the idea is that you can use this so that maybe you won't have to go up on the medication as quickly. So, as we know, something like morphine is a common drug in hospice and is often increased by the nursing team, the physicians, as the patient's pain grows. So by teaching the patient this meditative heartbeat therapy, we're hoping that maybe we can delay the need to increase that drug. Maybe some of this meditation, this method will help them to feel that calm, feel a little bit of pain relief before they need to go up on the dosage.
Okay, so let's just start at when do you use this? And so tell us about your personal job and how you use this on a regular basis.
Sure. So, with the hospice where I work now is I'm with Waveney Visiting Nurse and Hospice. We are based in Wilton, Connecticut, with Waveney Life Care Network, which is out of New Canaan, Connecticut, and we're a relatively small network compared to some of the bigger folks that are here in Connecticut and the New York City area in general. But we have a hospice census of roughly 60 patients at any given time. And in addition to that, I also serve as the interim spiritual services director for our care center and what we call the village, which is our assisted living center.
Okay.
And so, what I'm able to do is to go and work with patients regularly and bring them heartbeat therapy as a form of spiritual care. And so, I will use the spiritual care methods that as a chaplain I learned years ago in when I was learning theology in university and for my master's degree, and then in clinical pastoral education. I'll use those methods, but I'll tie them in with heartbeat therapy. So, in the book, it talks about using it with oxygen therapy, but also using it with candlelight clinical hypnosis. It explains methods for that. It explains methods that death doulas can get involved and use it. And I serve as a doula on our team. So we have 6 really, really dedicated doulas that I lead, and we're all volunteers. So when we're serving as a doula, we do it at no charge to the hospice or the patient or the family. And we go out and we'll sit vigil for the last 72 hours. And heartbeat therapy is a method I'll use. So if a patient's very anxious, I'll pull out my recording stethoscope. Even if the patient isn't fully cognizant in that moment, I'll make a quick recording of the heartbeat. I'll play it back for the patient. And then I'll encourage this patient, whether conscious or unconscious, to breathe with their heartbeat, to breathe with me, to focus on the good, to focus on the journey they're on if they're in at the active dying stage. And generally, over the study, we saw about a 72 to 73% success rate in getting people calmer than they were prior to the start of MHBT, meditative heartbeat therapy.
That's wonderful. Give me an idea how long it can take to get somebody comfortable. I mean, it doesn't sound like it would take very long.
Well, ideally, we're going to get them comfortable using a combination of MHBT, meditative heartbeat therapy, and the comfort medication that is prescribed to them by the clinical side of the team.
Sure.
And so, like with any hospice approach, it's very much a team approach. So I'll work with the nurses or the patient's family, and I'll say, when are you giving the, for example, morphine? Well, we'll give it in about 10 minutes. That's when the next dose is due. So I'll coordinate that. Maybe in those 10 minutes, I'll make that recording. Or I'll start to figure out, is a recording better, or is maybe having it? There's a wonderful stethoscope that allows you to play it over a speaker system while it's on the patient's chest. So sometimes I use that method. And then by the time the medications are given, I'm ready to start. I try to start around the same time as the med and then continue through the medication onset. So between the meds and heartbeat therapy, our goal is to get people calm within 15 to 20 minutes.
Nice. I like it. So you do this, and if you get them calm in 15 to 20 minutes, do you continue the therapy or is it something you would restart again in a half an hour? Do you have like a protocol of how often you use it?
So it's very individualized. If we find that it's particularly working for a patient, then we might start it again in 3 hours when the next dose is due. Or if the patient is awake and still feeling a bit anxious, but maybe a bit better, we'll give it another half an hour, like you said, and then we'll start again. Or in the ideal situation, the patient dozes off to sleep. After they're calm, you give them another roughly half hour, so total of 45 minutes to an hour from the time we start. They're in a nice sleeping state. And then we can fade away and come back either when we're needed urgently or maybe even the next day when we can try this therapy again, when things start again, or when the patient may feel anxious again.
Wonderful. I love that stethoscope that has a speaker. That sounds wonderful. Do you leave people do you record that also for them to use when you're not present, or is that something you do?
Absolutely. So once I pull out I call it the Echo, and that's the brand name of the stethoscope that I use. There are a lot of recording stethoscopes, but I happen to like this one. And when I pull that out, in addition to the live sort of, let's call it a broadcast, the recording or the sound going onto the speaker, I can make a recording at the same time. And so what I'll do with that is I will give it to the patient and family so they can use it for heartbeat therapy, but B, it becomes a very nice bereavement tool for the family member.
That's what I was thinking, that they can hear their loved one's heartbeat.
And that lasts forever. So I have found that some families, very few, don't want it. They say, no, his or her heartbeat is gone. I want it to stay gone. Some people say, most people say, oh, yeah, please let me have, mom or dad's or my wife or my husband's heartbeat. And then I'll present it to them. I'll clean up the recording so that it sounds a little bit better. I'll enhance the volume a little bit. I might take out any like lung noises or breathing sounds that were there, and then I'll give them a clean version of their loved one's heart.
What a blessing you must be to your patients and families.
It's a blessing for me, honestly.
Sure.
Like I said, we have a wonderful team, and to work with such dedicated people, but also to work with such dedicated families. I mean, in a decade or so of doing this work, I've yet to see a single family that doesn't care. Even if they seem like they don't when the person is well and they maybe had a tumultuous relationship, when push comes to shove and the end is near, the love really shows. And it's a beautiful thing to then be able to say, okay, I know you and dad didn't have the best relationship. I'm glad you two reconciled at the end. Here's dad's heartbeat. Now you can listen to it since you never really had the chance while he was here with us.
Mm, I love it. And you probably know this, but I would think, some of the options might be to put that recording in a teddy bear, like Build-A-Bear probably would put a little recording in there.
Yeah, I've definitely thought about that. I've actually even started to look into little devices, online or wherever I can find them that are shaped like a heart, and they're little just plastic things that people can listen to. I even thought about something for the patient themselves, like you say, a teddy bear, in a way that they can hold it and hear their own heartbeat. Or maybe oftentimes in hospice, and over my years, certainly, I've only been doing it 10 years versus some others who have been in it for a lifetime. But I've seen now cases where, the husband passes and then the wife is still alive. And now she comes on hospice a few years later. To be able to hold her husband's heartbeat in a teddy bear would be lovely. And that is definitely a future direction for this, I think.
Right. And also nowadays, there's probably frames that you could utilize where somebody can walk by, see a picture of dad and push dad's, little button and listen to their heartbeat. It would be beautiful.
Yeah, in fact, I'll say one patient's granddaughter, an adult granddaughter, we recorded her grandmother's heartbeat. And for Mother's Day the following year, this was in roughly November, so the next May, she gave a photo of her grandmother with a QR code of the recording to her mother so that she can go by at any time and just point her phone at it and hear her own mother's heart.
You're right. QR codes, I tell you, they're everywhere. And what a great idea to use them like that.
They are a great idea.
Talk to me about so your book, is this something that is a shorter book or is it a longer book? And is it something that a patient's family could pick up the book and do? Because obviously you're in Connecticut. If they're in California or anywhere in the world, can they buy this book and utilize this process fairly simply?
So absolutely, it's about the size of the size I would say in terms of dimension, length, and width of about a standard novel, and then it's 211 pages, so it's nothing too demanding.
Okay.
And I would say that intended for professionals originally,
Hmm.
I did find that as I was writing it and going through it and working with others, that the methods really are great, and the way the book is written is great for families, caregivers, even hospice patients, and they can do this themselves. So, for example, I mentioned the hypnosis portion and the section on hypnosis, and that really only involves a candle and a dark room and your own heartbeat. So someone could go to their local pharmacy, pick up an inexpensive stethoscope, read that section, put that stethoscope to their heart and in their ears, listen to their heartbeat and look at a flame, and hopefully, I would say, have the same effect that they would get if I was there, for example, doing the therapy with them.
No, absolutely. I really think when it comes to something that's so new, how do we get it out there? And I think that's realistic to have kind of a process. Have you thought, and maybe you've already done this, have you thought of doing maybe an educational YouTube video that you could put out as something that goes along with the book? Have you done something like that?
Thought about it. Honestly, it's the burden of the production that is the wall in the way of that, because I think it's just finding someone that can help me to put something like that together in a way that is both accessible but professional enough that I'd be okay with with folks seeing it
Right.
is important. And so what I do right now is I offer both intensives for hospices, CPE programs, etc. And I offer sessions in churches, community centers, places where folks are that are meant, I call them my salon series,
Okay.
and they're meant to bring people to heartbeat therapy. So let's say that you are involved with your local community center in your town. You can go to our website and say, I'd love to bring a salon here. And I'll bring folks into a circle. We'll talk about hospice and palliative care. And at the same time, we'll use heartbeat therapy as a method. So you'll be learning while we have a very open conversation. And that's free of charge. I will go to any community center free of charge and do that. And then the professional sessions, those intensives, there is a cost involved for organizations, but it's a sliding scale and certainly can be discussed on a case by case basis.
Perfect. No, that's perfect that you give lessons basically. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. That's wonderful.
And I certainly thank you. And I certainly don't want folks to be intimidated if they do visit our website, which is heartbeattherapy.com. They'll see the salon series and they'll see that it does talk from a spiritual light. It talks about your church or community center. But rest assured, there's never a theology or a dogma involved. We're not trying to get you to convert or do anything. It's simply to talk about end of life care. So my background is chaplaincy, but non denominational chaplaincy.
Right.
I believe that I say to folks, we can talk about God all day or not talk about God at all. This is about you and where you are in your journey, and that's what I'm here for.
I had a great interview. Just actually, I took a pause. I took a few month break, but the chaplain said that, she stopped by, and this patient, I don't want to talk to you. I don't, and
Mhm.
something about, I can't remember the exact quote, but they, wanted to talk about the news. And so this chaplain used that avenue but they were able to find that comfort piece. This person just wanted to talk about the news. I think they ended up talking about their, personal belief system, but it was that opening because I think the problem is with chaplaincy is that people have this, and it's unfortunate, but I feel like there's like you said, that they're always worried that you're going to try and convert them, and that's not the focus whatsoever. It's getting somebody spiritually comfortable, whatever that looks like.
Precisely, and I would encourage everyone who's thinking about hospice or on hospice to reach out to the team and ask for the chaplain. Every hospice is required by Medicare and Medicaid services to have at least one chaplain to cover the team. And it's important that we bring chaplains in to talk about exactly that. One thing my publisher, John from Apocryphal Press, pointed out to me after we were in the editing phase is he said, this isn't just a guide, it's a spiritual manifesto. There's no religion. It's not talking about Catholicism or Lutheranism or Judaism or any particular faith. Rather, it does have sections on cultures and how it can be used if you happen to be one of those among those faiths. But it also talks about something called the Bardo stage. And that's in those final 72 hours. So much of what I do is influenced by that time frame. And in those final 72 hours, that journey that person's on. And whether that journey is purely physical and happening in the brain, or whether that journey is actually a journey of the spirit that's happening and something beyond our understanding, there's still something happening in that person's mind. And I think respecting that and being a part of that and bearing witness to that is a really important way for us all to learn about life as a whole and what living is and what may or may not be next for us.
Right, absolutely. But my thoughts are, we want to make sure body, mind, and soul are comforted at end of life. I have definitely focused as a nurse. We totally focus on the physical.
Mhm.
We focus on medicines, physical comfort, pillows, turning, changing briefs, things like that. There's a lot of physical comfort nurses provide, and we're really good at it. And chaplains are really good at spiritual. Social workers can really help that the mind connection when you're worried about your finances, or you're worried about, the condition that your family is going to be in afterwards. There's things that we can do in the hospice with the team to help put people at ease. And I just always encourage it so much.
Exactly. It's so critical to have all parts of that care. And yes, the nurses who I admire so much, who go in there and do so much for a patient and know so much about the body and can take care of so much. I like to say, there's no stitches for the soul.
Right.
And sometimes as chaplains, we have to go in and we have to invent something new to heal this specific soul. Sometimes we go in and it's very simple. I had a lovely woman who was over 100 years old a while ago who was so incredibly upset because when she was in her youth, about 4 or 5 years old, she stole a candy bar from the corner store and she was never able to confess it. And so she finally confessed it, and she felt so good. And she said, "Make sure you tell everyone else how good it felt to get to say things that have been weighing on you."
Isn't that interesting that they took until at that age to confess something, and they were able to recognize that that was a problem?
Exactly, and yet it was something seemingly so minor. It was literally a candy bar from a corner store. Something that seemingly, to you or I, we would laugh off, but to her, she carried that weight in her soul. And it wasn't until the fifth or sixth visit, when we had explored all of that, that we had realized that maybe if we let go of this weight a little, some of the other burdens that you're carrying will start to ease. And certainly they did. And she was someone who considered herself a quote unquote non-believer. That was her word. She was atheist, whatever you'd like to say, non-believer was her word. And yet to get this little sin, as she called it, off her chest was so important.
Interesting. That's beautiful. Honestly, that's just a beautiful story no matter what belief system, but, she was righting wrongs and confessing and making things right no matter
Mhm.
what, right?
Right, and I can only imagine what else that inspired, what else she thought about, who else she spoke to
Right.
before her ultimate passing, and the wrongs that she felt she made right, or just the people that she made feel a little bit better because of the things she said.
Well, I so appreciate that story. Do you have a funny story? I love funny stories. I didn't use them a lot in my early podcasts, but I think they really add something.
Oh, geez, there's been quite a few things. Hey, I was in a patient's home, and the patient needed me to grab their morphine bottle. They were able to self administer, which is a chaplain, of course, I can't do, but I was able to get their bottle off the shelf for them and hand it to them. And so I go to hand them the morphine bottle, and I tripped in their kitchen
Oh.
and I spilled the morphine.
Oh, no.
Luckily, they had another bottle. The patient was fine. But it got all over my shirt. Now I thought, okay, no big deal. Well, later that day, I was on my way to Florida to see a friend. It was a Friday. And I get to the airport in New York. It's a New York airport, and they had dogs at the airport.
Oh, my goodness.
Yep. And so I'm waiting in the security line, and this one of the police dogs comes up to me, as they sniff people and make sure no one has anything, and apparently alerts on me. And so without even thinking I had cleaned my shirt, I'm not sure what's going on.
Mhm.
So the dog sits down, the officer says to me, "Sir, do you have anything?" No, I don't think so. Okay, he pulls me out of line. I go out of line. They go through my bag. They go through my pockets. They go through everything. Nothing, but the dog is still going crazy. It took me an embarrassingly long amount of time to realize that I had spilled morphine all over myself, and the dog was smelling that. And I did miss my flight that night
Wow.
because of the morphine incident when I'm just thinking, "Oh, my shirt is dry, I'm fine."
Oh my gosh, that is funny.
But, not according to an apparently a drug-sniffing dog, I'm not. The morphine
The
incident, yes.
morphine incident. That's what I want to name this episode. I love that story.
Yeah, that was an interesting one too, for sure. There's definitely a lot of interesting things that happen to us in this field, I would say.
Anytime you work with the public at any point, you're going to have some good stories. What do you think, if you've been in hospice for 10 years, what do you think is the number one thing that needs to change or improve?
I would say it is the integrative approach that needs to improve. So I think more individuals in terms of family and loved ones and patients, but also professionals need to embrace the addition that they can bring to the care. So it's not attempting to replace traditional medicine. It's not attempting to question methods that people have already been using for pain relief, for anxiety, etc. It is bringing new methods in that can really help people to, as you said, heal or at least improve mind, body, and soul and feel a little bit better. These folks are on the way to dying anyway. Let's add things to their care that really make their life as good as possible. We like to say in hospice it's about quality of life. Well, often that doesn't mean they're going to the beach anymore. They're not going out to their favorite restaurant. So let's bring them things that maybe they didn't even know existed that could give them the same joy and enrichment at home.
I love it. No, you're right. What can we bring to the home to make things improved? Absolutely. And I think honestly coming back around, meditative heartbeat therapy sounds like an absolute 100% improvement for hospice providers no matter what, if you're the chaplain, the social work, the nurse, the CNA, all of the disciplines can use this method it sounds like.
Definitely, and that's the wonderful thing about it is, honestly, you don't even have to know how to use the stethoscope appropriately. So, a chaplain who's never touched a stethoscope in their life can go out, all they're looking for is the best place where the heartbeat sounds best. Place it on the patient's chest where it sounds best. You're not trying to get a medical diagnosis or a reading or listen for anything specific. You're just listening for that clear thumping heartbeat, and then you can share that with the patient and their family, and you can bring various methods. You can incorporate it into their culture, into their religion. You can add in hypnotherapy. You can add in doula services. You can add in oxygen therapy, which is so common anyway. But now you can make oxygen therapy a ritual. You can make it so it's not something you dread having to put those things in your nose, but rather it's something you say, okay, I can do this because I know that it's helping me breathe better. And I've heard, whether it's actually just in their mind or something that's really happening, I've heard my heartbeat sound better after I started using the oxygen.
Nice. Very nice. I think what you have created is just going to do nothing but bless others. And I just can't thank you enough, Daniel, for coming on Hospice Explain and explaining it. And you've let my audience know the website, but let's go ahead and repeat that again.
Sure, the website is heartbeattherapy.com.
And your books, the title of your book again?
Meditative Heartbeat Therapy, a contemplative guide to presence, rhythm, and care at end of life. And it's out now from in your favorite bookstores.
Wonderful. Daniel, thank you so much. I appreciate the time that you've spent learning this craft and sharing it with others.
Thank you. It's been a blessing. The thousands of patients I've seen, this has been a journey paved on heartbeats, and it's been a beautiful one. And I look forward to all the years I have ahead and all the heartbeats that I'll hear on the way. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me on Hospice Explained. Think about ways you can make a difference in someone's life. Also, please subscribe and share this podcast with anyone who would benefit from listening. Thank you.